Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story hits different because it's not about some naive guy getting scammed by a bar girl or losing his savings to a woman he met online. This one comes from Emma, a 34-year-old woman from Stockholm, Sweden, who thought she had her life figured out. She had a good job, a solid relationship, a comfortable apartment, and one of the world's most livable cities. She and her partner Marcus had been together for 6 years. 6 years. That's not nothing. That's mortgages and shared friends and knowing how someone takes their coffee without asking. But sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a con artist or a scammer. Sometimes it's just another person who makes your partner remember what wanting something feels like. Emma's story is about how a 2-week vacation in Vietnam unraveled everything she thought was real, and how the worst betrayals aren't always the ones you can see coming. If you've ever felt your relationship slipping away and couldn't figure out when it started, if you've ever been blindsided by someone you thought you knew completely, drop a comment below, letting us know where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe because trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. Now, let's get into Emma's letter. I need to tell someone this story because it's been 8 months and I still can't make sense of it. I've told my friends the sanitized version, told my mother the even more sanitized version, but the truth is messier and more painful. And I think the only way I can move past it is to just say it all out loud to strangers who have no reason to judge me gently. My name is Emma. I'm 34. I work in marketing for a tech company in Stockholm. And up until last year, I thought I understood my life. I thought I understood my relationship. Marcus and I had been together for 6 years. We met at a friend's midsummer party, one of those perfect Swedish summer nights where the sun never really sets and everyone's drunk on aquavit and possibility. He was funny, smart, worked in finance, had his shit together. We moved in together after a year. Got a nice apartment in Södermalm, the kind of place our parents' generation could never afford in their 30s. We had dinner parties. We went to the gym together on Sundays. We talked vaguely about marriage, about kids someday, but never with any urgency. We were comfortable. God, we were so comfortable. And that was the problem, I think, though I didn't see it then. Comfortable had turned into coasting. Our sex life had become predictable, scheduled almost, like we were checking a box. Tuesday nights usually. Sometimes Saturday mornings if we didn't have plans. It was fine. Not bad, just fine. We'd stop surprising each other. Stop trying to surprise each other. But nothing felt broken. We didn't fight. We still laughed at the same stupid shows. We just existed alongside each other in this pleasant, low-stakes way that I mistook for stability. In February, Marcus suggested we take a trip. A real trip, not just a long weekend in Copenhagen or a week at his parents' summer house. He wanted adventure. He said we needed to shake things up, get out of our routine. He suggested Vietnam. He'd backpacked through Southeast Asia in his early 20s before we met, and he talked about Vietnam like it was some kind of transformative experience. The energy, the food, the chaos, how alive everything felt. I agreed immediately. I think I was relieved, actually, that he wanted to do something spontaneous with me, that he was thinking about us. We booked 2 weeks in April, Hanoi to Hoi An to Ho Chi Minh City. I bought new dresses, got my hair done, felt that flutter of anticipation I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. I convinced myself this trip would remind us why we worked, that we just needed to be removed from our routine, from work stress and grocery shopping and the mundane weight of everyday life. The flight was long, like stand up and stretch in the aisle because your legs have gone numb. Long, but we landed in Hanoi on a Thursday morning, and the heat hit us like walking into a wall. That thick, wet heat that makes your clothes stick to your skin immediately. The airport was chaos, people everywhere. Signs in Vietnamese we couldn't read, taxi drivers yelling offers we didn't understand. Marcus navigated it all with this confidence I found attractive. He haggled with the driver, got us to our hotel, seemed energized by the mayhem in a way I hadn't seen in him for a long time. Those first few days in Hanoi were good. Genuinely good. We wandered through the old quarter, dodged motorbikes, ate pho on plastic stools, drank Baiahoy that cost less than a coffee back home. We took one of those tours where you sit on the back of a motorbike and a local driver takes you around the city. I held on to Marcus's waist and felt something like happiness, something like us. We took selfies in front of Hoan Kiem Lake. We bought ridiculous souvenirs. We laughed at our terrible attempts to cross the street through rivers of scooters. But I noticed things. Small things that didn't seem important then, but feel huge now when I replay everything in my mind. Marcus was on his phone more than usual. He'd check it during meals, smile at something, then put it away quickly when he noticed me watching. When I asked what was funny, he'd say it was just memes from his friends back home, word gossip, nothing interesting. I believed him because why wouldn't I? We'd been together 6 years. You don't question every smile at a screen after 6 years. After 4 days in Hanoi, we took a bus south to Hoi An. That's where everything started to crack, though I didn't know it yet. Hoi An is beautiful in this almost overwhelming way. The old town with its yellow buildings and lanterns everywhere, the river at sunset, the tailors making custom suits in 48 hours. It felt romantic. We had dinner by the water, walked through the night market, held hands like we used to when we first met. I remember thinking maybe this trip was working, maybe we just needed this. Our hotel was nice, one of those places that's not quite luxury but nicer than anything we'd normally book. It had a spa. Marcus suggested we get a couples massage, said his back was tight from all the traveling. I thought it was sweet that he wanted to do something together. We booked an appointment for the next afternoon. The spa was quiet, incense burning, those bamboo water fountain sounds playing from hidden speakers. We were led into a room with 2 massage tables side by side. My masseuse was an older woman, maybe 50s, professional, barely spoke. Marcus's masseuse was young, maybe 24, 25. She introduced herself as Lynn. She was beautiful in that way that makes you suddenly aware of your own body, your own age, all the small ways you've stopped trying. Long, dark hair, delicate features, wearing the traditional Ao-Dai uniform. She smiled at both of us, but her eyes lingered on Marcus just a second longer than necessary. Or maybe I'm imagining that now, retrofitting details to make the story make sense. We lay face down on our tables. The massage started. I tried to relax, but I kept glancing over at Marcus's table. I could see Lynn working on his back, her small hands moving with practiced precision. I heard Marcus groan softly, that sound people make when someone finds a knot. Then I heard Lynn laugh, quiet and musical, at something Marcus said. I couldn't hear what he'd said. They were talking in low voices, him in English, her responding with accented words and more soft laughter. I told myself I was being insane. It was a massage. She was doing her job. Marcus was just being friendly, making conversation the way he always did. He was good at that, making people feel comfortable, making strangers laugh. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. But something felt different in his body language. Even face down on that table, even through the dim lighting and the incense haze, I could see him relax under her touch in a way I hadn't seen in years. His shoulders dropped. His breathing changed. He looked unburdened. When the massage ended, we thanked our masseuses, tipped, got dressed in the changing rooms. Walking back to our hotel room, Marcus seemed lighter, more present. He kept touching my lower back, pulling me close, kissing my temple. That night, he made love to me with an intensity that felt almost aggressive, urgent, like he was trying to prove something or fuck something out of his system. It was good, better than it had been in months, but it also felt strange, desperate maybe. I fell asleep, confused and satisfied and vaguely uneasy in a way I couldn't name. The next morning, Marcus suggested we go back to the spa. Get another massage, he said. His back felt amazing, best it's felt in years. I found it weird. Marcus wasn't a spa guy. He'd always rolled his eyes when I suggested couples massages back home, said it was overpriced, and he could just use the foam roller. But here he was, eager to go back. I said sure. What else was I going to say? We were on vacation. We were supposed to be relaxing, trying new things, saying yes to experiences. So we went back that afternoon. Marcus asked for Lynn specifically. The receptionist smiled knowingly, said, "Of course, Lynn gives very good massage." I got the same older woman as before. We were led to the same room. This time, I couldn't stop listening. I tried to focus on my own massage, on the pressure on my muscles, the oil, the music, but my ears were tuned entirely to the table next to me. I heard them talking more this time. Marcus asking Lynn questions about where she was from, how long she'd worked there, what she did for fun. Lynn answering in her careful English, asking him questions back. Where was he from? Was this his first time in Vietnam? Was he enjoying Hoi An? Her voice was sweet, genuinely interested. I heard her laugh again, multiple times. I heard Marcus laugh too, that specific laugh he used when he was flirting, though I don't think I admitted to myself that's what it was yet. Something coiled in my stomach, tight and sick. I wanted to sit up, to say something, to break whatever was happening at the table next to me. But what would I say? You're talking too much to your masseuse. You're laughing too much. I sounded crazy even in my own head, so I stayed silent, face down in the hole of the massage table, feeling something shift in the room that I couldn't name and couldn't stop. After the massage, Marcus said he wanted to walk alone for a bit. Clear his head, he said. The Vietnamese coffee always made him jittery. He needed to walk it off. I nodded, said sure, told him I'd hang by the hotel pool. He kissed my forehead, distracted, and headed out into the Hoi An heat. I sat by the pool for 3 hours. I didn't swim. I didn't read the book 1500 brought. I just sat there watching other couples, watching families, watching solo travelers who seemed perfectly content in their aloneness in a way I suddenly envied. There was a couple, maybe late 20s, who couldn't keep their hands off each other. He kept pulling her into the water. She kept laughing and pushing him away, then pulling him back. They had that new relationship energy, that unself-conscious hunger for each other. I watched them and felt something like grief. Marcus and I used to be like that. Not recently, but once. When did we stop? When did I stop being someone he wanted to pull into a pool? My phone sat on the table next to me. I kept checking it. No messages for Marcus. I thought about texting him but couldn't figure out what to say that wouldn't sound needy or suspicious. Where are you? What are you doing? Are you thinking about your masseuse? I sounded unhinged even to myself. He came back around 6, golden hour, the light making everything look romantic and forgiving. He was sweaty, smiling, said he'd walked all the way to and Bang Beach and back. His phone buzzed as he sat down next to me. He glanced at it, smiled at the screen, then put it face down on the table. I asked who it was. He said just a friend from work sending him a funny video. Could he see the video? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then said his phone was almost dead, he'd show me later. He suggested we get ready for dinner. There was a restaurant by the river he wanted to try. At dinner, his phone buzzed constantly. Every few minutes, a notification lighting up the screen. He positioned it face down, but I could see the light, could see him resisting the urge to check it. I asked if everything was okay, if work was blowing up. He said, yeah, actually, there was a situation with a client. Nothing urgent, but kind of annoying. He seemed relieved that I'd given him an excuse. 20 minutes into our meal, he said he should probably take a call, just to sort it out, didn't want it hanging over the rest of the trip. I said, of course, understanding, supportive girlfriend, the role I'd perfected over 6 years. He stepped away from the table, walked toward the river where the music from the restaurant wouldn't interfere. I watched him through the window. He wasn't on a phone call. He was texting, rapid fire, his face illuminated by the screen glow. And he was smiling. That private smile people get when they're talking to someone who makes them feel something. I knew that smile. He used to aim it at me. He came back 20 minutes later, apologetic, affectionate, in that overcompensating way that people get when they're feeling guilty. He ordered us dessert, held my hand across the table, suggested we get Vietnamese iced coffee from a street vendor on the way back to the hotel. We walked through the lantern-lit streets, and he was present, attentive, asking me questions about what I wanted to do tomorrow, saying we should rent bikes and ride through the rice fields. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted so badly to believe that everything was fine. That night in bed, I couldn't sleep. Marcus was out immediately. Jet lag and walking and whatever emotional energy he was burning, finally catching up to him. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above us, listening to the sounds of Hoi An at night filtering through the window. Motorbikes, distant music, voices in Vietnamese. I felt like I was in a nightmare where everything looked beautiful, but something essential was rotting underneath. The next morning, Marcus said he wanted to book another massage. Said his back was still tight, that Lynn had really worked out some serious knots yesterday. He should probably get one more session before we left Hoi An. The way he said her name, casual but too casual, like he practiced saying it neutrally. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my face calm. I said I'd skip this one. I wanted to explore the old town, maybe get a dress made at one of the tailors. He looked relieved, almost too relieved. He said that sounded great. He'd meet me for lunch after. There was a place near the Japanese bridge he'd read about. I left the hotel at 10. I walked through the old town, but I wasn't really seeing anything. The yellow buildings, the lanterns, the tourists taking photos. It all felt like backdrop. Like I was walking through a movie set of someone else's vacation. I went into a tailor shop because that's what you're supposed to do in Hoi An. A woman showed me fabrics, took my measurements, asked what style I wanted. I pointed at something in a catalog. She said she could have it ready in 2 days. I paid the deposit and left, and couldn't remember what I'd ordered. I don't know what made me go back to the hotel early. Intuition, maybe, or just the inability to pretend anymore that I was having a nice time exploring alone. I walked back around noon, an hour before Marcus and I were supposed to meet for lunch. The hotel lobby was open air, plants everywhere, ceiling fans moving the hot air around. And there he was. Marcus was standing near the reception desk, but he wasn't alone. Lynn was with him. She wasn't in her spa uniform. She was wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her hair down, looking even younger and more beautiful in street clothes. They weren't touching, but the space between them hummed with something I recognized immediately. That electric field that exists between two people in the first bloom of attraction. She was smiling up at him, saying something I couldn't hear. He was leaning toward her, his body language completely open, completely engaged. Then she reached out and touched his arm, just briefly, her fingers on his forearm, and said something that made him smile. Not the polite smile you give service workers or strangers. The real smile, the one that reaches the eyes. I stood frozen near the entrance. They hadn't seen me yet. I watched as Lynn glanced at her phone, said something that looked like goodbye, then walked out through the lobby and into the street. Marcus watched her go. His face was soft, unguarded, and I saw something in it that made my stomach drop. Want, longing. The look of someone who's just spent time with a person who makes them feel alive. Then he turned and saw me. His expression did something complicated in the span of maybe 2 seconds. Surprise first, then guilt, then something harder. Not quite defiance, but close. Like he'd been caught, but also like some part of him was relieved to be caught, relieved to stop pretending. We looked at each other across that hotel lobby with its ceiling fans and tropical plants, and I absolutely knew, that everything was about to come apart. He walked over to me, asked how the old town was, if I'd found a tailor, his voice too bright, too normal. I didn't answer his questions. I asked him what Lynn was doing at our hotel. He said she'd stop by to give him the name of a restaurant, somewhere locals go that tourists don't know about. Said he'd mentioned wanting authentic food and she'd offered to help. His explanation was smooth, practiced, but his eyes couldn't quite meet mine. I asked why she had his phone number. How else would she know to meet him here? He hesitated. Said they'd exchanged numbers on WhatsApp after the first massage. She'd offered to give him recommendations for things to do in Hoi An. She was just being nice. It was just friendly. The way he said friendly, defensive, and almost annoyed that I was questioning it, like I was being paranoid and controlling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to call him a liar. But we were in a hotel lobby, and there were staff at the desk and other guests walking through, and some deeply ingrained part of me that was raised to be polite and not make scenes kept me quiet. I said I had a headache. I was going back to the room. He said he'd come with me. I said no. I needed to lie down alone. He didn't fight me on it. I went to our room and sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My hands were shaking. I felt stupid and naive, and so incredibly angry at myself for not seeing this sooner, for explaining away all the signs, for choosing comfort over confrontation. How long had they been talking? Since the first massage 3 days ago. How many messages had they exchanged? What had they said to each other? I picked up my phone and almost called my best friend back in Stockholm, but it was the middle of the night there, and what would I even say? That my boyfriend might be emotionally cheating on me with a Vietnamese masseuse. But I wasn't sure, and I had no proof. And maybe I was overreacting? I sounded crazy. I felt crazy. Marcus came back to the room an hour later with lunch from somewhere, spring rolls and vermicelli bowls in takeout containers. He was being so careful with me, so gentle, like I was a bomb that might go off. We ate in near silence. I asked him point blank if something was going on with Lynn. He looked me in the eyes and said, no, absolutely not. She was just a friendly person who'd offered to show him around. I was reading into something that wasn't there. He said, maybe we'd been spending too much time together. Maybe we both needed some space. Maybe that's why I was feeling insecure. He turned it around on me so smoothly, made it about my paranoia instead of his behavior. I wanted to believe him. Even knowing what I'd seen, even feeling in my gut that he was lying, some part of me wanted to accept his explanation and go back to pretending everything was fine, because the alternative was too big, too terrifying. The alternative meant our relationship was ending in a hotel room in Vietnam, and I'd have to figure out how to survive the rest of this trip and get home and untangle 6 years of combined life. So I said okay. I said maybe I was feeling weird from the heat and the travel and being out of our routine. I said sorry for overreacting. He looked so relieved. He pulled me close, held me, said he loved me, said this trip was supposed to bring us closer, not drive us apart. And I let him hold me, and I said nothing about the fact that his phone was buzzing in his pocket, pressed between us. Another message from someone who was making him smile in ways I couldn't anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Marcus was next to me breathing deeply, peacefully, while I stared at the dark ceiling and felt everything I thought I knew rearranging itself into a new, terrible shape. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and went to the bathroom. His phone was on the nightstand, face down, charging. I'd never gone through his phone in 6 years. Never felt the need to, never wanted to be that person. But I picked it up. It was locked, of course. I tried his usual passcode, the one he used for everything, our anniversary numbers. It didn't work. He'd changed it. That told me everything I needed to know. But I stood there in the dark bathroom holding his phone anyway, feeling sick, feeling like I was falling through space with nothing to grab onto. I put the phone back exactly where it had been and got back into bed. Marcus stirred, reached for me in his sleep, pulled me close. His arm around me felt like a lie. His breathing felt like a lie. 6 years felt like a lie. Morning came too bright, too hot. We had 6 more days left in Vietnam. 6 more days of pretending. Marcus suggested we rent motorbikes and ride out to the rice fields. I said sure. What else was I going to say? We rented bikes from a shop near the hotel, these little, semi-automatic things that scared me immediately. Marcus was confident, taking off into traffic like he'd been doing it his whole life. I followed more slowly, gripping the handlebars too tight, convinced I was going to crash into a water buffalo, or a family of 4 on a single scooter. The rice fields were beautiful in that way, that should have been meaningful, that I should have been present for. Bright green stretching forever, water-reflecting sky, farmers in conical hats bent over their work. We stopped and took photos. Marcus put his arm around me, and we smiled at the camera held at arm's length. I wonder if you can see it in those photos, the space that had opened up between us even as we stood pressed together. On the ride back, my bike stalled at an intersection. I couldn't get it started again. Traffic was building up around me, motorbikes honking, and I was panicking, nearly crying from frustration and heat and the weight of everything else. Marcus circled back, helped me restart it, followed me closely the rest of the way. For a moment I felt grateful, felt like maybe we were still a team. Then we got back to the hotel, and he said he needed to return some work emails. He'd be at the business center for an hour or so. I knew he wasn't going to the business center. I knew it the way you know things in your body before your brain catches up. I went to the pool again, sat in the same chair as before, watched the same types of couples being happy. After 45 minutes, I saw Marcus walk through the lobby and out the front entrance. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. He was walking toward the old town. I stayed far enough back that he wouldn't see me. I felt insane doing this, felt like a character in a bad movie, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. He walked to a cafe near the river, one of those places with low tables and floor cushions. And she was there. Lynn, waiting for him. She stood up when she saw him, smiled that smile, and they sat down together like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood across the street, partially hidden behind a tailor shop, watching them through the cafe window. They were talking, laughing, leaning close across the table. At one point, she touched his hand and he didn't pull away. He turned his hand over so their palms were touching. Just for a moment. But I saw it. I walked back to the hotel. I didn't confront them. I didn't storm into the cafe and make a scene. One just walked back and sat in our room and waited. He came back 2 hours later, cheerful, asked if I wanted to get dinner. I said we needed to talk. His face changed. That guilty look again, but also something else. Relief, maybe. Like he was tired of lying, tired of the performance. I asked him directly if he was involved with Lynn, and this time, he didn't deny it. He sat down on the edge of the bed, not looking at me, and told me the truth. He said he didn't love me anymore. Hadn't for a while, maybe a year, maybe longer. He said meeting Lynn wasn't the cause of anything. She was just the catalyst that made him realize he'd been staying out of comfort, out of fear, out of habit. He said he'd been miserable and numb and going through the motions, and he didn't want to do it anymore. I asked him if he'd slept with her. He said no, not yet, but he wanted to. He said she made him feel alive again, made him feel like himself again, like the person he'd been before life got so fucking beige and predictable. He said those exact words, beige and predictable. Like our 6 years together were an IKEA showroom he'd been trapped in. I couldn't breathe. I asked him what he wanted. If he wanted to work on us, go to therapy, fix whatever had broken. He shook his head. He said he didn't want to fix it. He said he was sorry, but he wasn't sorry enough to stop feeling what he was feeling. He said he wanted to see where things went with Lynn. He said he was going back to Vietnam after this trip, that they'd already talked about it, that she'd said he could stay with her. The room tilted. I heard myself asking questions, but my voice sounded far away. When did this happen? How many times had they met? Had he been planning this the whole time? Was this trip just his exit strategy? He said no. He genuinely thought the trip might help us. But then he met her, and everything crystallized. He said he was sorry for hurting me, but he had to be honest now. He couldn't keep pretending. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask how he could throw away 6 years for someone he'd known for 4 days. I wanted to tell him he was having a midlife crisis, that this was just vacation brain, that none of this was real. But I didn't say any of that. I just asked him why he didn't tell me sooner, before we came on this trip, before he let me believe we were okay. He said he didn't know how to tell me, said he thought maybe the trip would change how he felt, said he was a coward. That last part, at least, was true. We had 4 more days in Vietnam. 4 more days because changing our flights was expensive and complicated, and neither of us had the energy to deal with it. Those 4 days were a special kind of hell that I don't have adequate words for. We slept in the same bed but stayed on our separate sides, miles of space between us. We ate meals together in silence or making the worst kind of small talk, logistics and practicalities, avoiding anything real. We went through the motions of the trip we'd planned, traveling south to Ho Chi Minh City, seeing the war museums and the markets, taking a boat through the Mekong Delta like tourists, like strangers who happened to be traveling the same route. Marcus disappeared for hours at a time. He stopped making excuses. I stopped asking where he'd been. I spent a lot of time alone in hotel rooms, crying in showers so the staff wouldn't hear, staring at my phone and not knowing who to call or what to say. How do you explain that your relationship ended in Vietnam because your boyfriend fell for his masseuse? It sounded like a joke. It felt like a joke I was the punchline of. I saw Lynn one more time. It was our second to last day. I'd gone out to find coffee. Real coffee. Something to get me through another day of this nightmare. I was walking back to the hotel, and I saw her waiting outside. She was dressed nicely, wearing a yellow ao dye, her hair up. She looked nervous and excited and young. So fucking young. Marcus came out of the hotel, and when he saw her, his whole face changed, lit up in a way it never did anymore when he saw me. She reached for his hand, and he took it, and they walked away together into the Saigon chaos. And I stood there, holding my coffee, watching them disappear. That's the image that stays with me. His hand in hers, the ease of it, the choice of it. The way he became a different version of himself around her, lighter and less burdened. The way he used to be before we got comfortable, before we became beige and predictable. The flight home was silent. 18 hours of sitting next to each other, headphones in, carefully not touching. Landing in Stockholm felt surreal. Gray skies, cold air, everything exactly as we'd left it, except we were different people now. We took the train home together one last time. At the apartment, I started packing. He said I didn't have to leave right away. We could figure it out, but I couldn't spend another night there. I stayed with my best friend for 2 weeks while I found a new place. We divided our stuff with the cold efficiency of people who wanted it over with. We told our friends we'd grown apart, kept it civil, didn't tell anyone the real story. I was embarrassed, ashamed even, that I'd been left for someone he'd known for less than a week, that I hadn't seen it coming. That 6 years meant so little in the face of whatever lightning bolt he'd felt with her. Marcus went back to Vietnam 2 months later. I know because a mutual friend told me, apologetically, like maybe I'd want to know, or maybe I wouldn't. I didn't ask for details, but they came anyway. He was living with Lynn in Hoi An. He'd quit his finance job, was teaching English. He looked happy in the photos people had seen, tanned and smiling, wearing linen shirts and going to beach barbecues. I stalked his Instagram once, late at night after too much wine. He'd made it public, which was new, like he wanted the world to see his transformation. There were photos of them together, Lynn on the back of his motorbike, both of them laughing. Lynn in his apartment, cooking something in a small kitchen. Marcus at sunset on Mbang Beach, the one he'd walked to that day in Hoi An, the day I sat alone by the pool. His captions were different than they used to be, more earnest, talking about taking risks and following your heart and living authentically. I closed the app and deleted it and didn't look again. It's been 8 months now. I live in a smaller apartment in Bassistan, 1 bedroom, just mine. I've been on a few dates that went nowhere. I've thrown myself into work. I've talked to a therapist who keeps asking me what I learned from this. Like there's supposed to be some neat lesson wrapped up in having your life detonated. The honest answer is, I don't know what I learned, except that you can think you know someone completely and be entirely wrong. What haunts me isn't even the betrayal, really, though that's there. It's simpler and worse than that. It's that I never saw it coming, which means either he hit it perfectly or I wasn't paying attention, which means maybe I didn't really know him at all. Or maybe I did know, somewhere deep down, that we'd stopped being real with each other, that we were just comfortable, and comfortable isn't enough. And I chose not to look at it directly until someone else made the choice for me. I don't blame Lynn. She was just a person who met someone and felt something. I don't even fully blame Marcus, though some days I'm so angry at him I can barely breathe. What I blame is how easy it was for him to walk away from 6 years. How little it took. 4 days, and a pretty girl, and the promise of feeling something again. I'm sitting in my apartment right now, November in Stockholm, dark at 4 in the afternoon, and I still don't have an answer that makes sense. How does a 2-week vacation undo 6 years? How do you ever feel safe in love again when you know how fast it can all disappear? I don't know. I'm still here, trying to figure it out, trying to believe that someday this will just be a story I tell, painful but distant, instead of this raw thing that still wakes me up at 3 in the morning feeling like I'm falling.